I guess I wanted to, I guess, report on what's been happening a little bit, both for myself but for the reader,
Yeah.
because there is a growing labor movement in the tech industry amidst all the other, the labor issues that you talked about in other industries, in auto working, in Hollywood. Um, it's happening in tech too, and I wanted to
Mm.
write about that and make that more accessible to more people.
Well, one of the examples you gave was Google.
Yeah.
I think you gave a couple of examples with them, but the one I'm particularly remembering was you were talking about a large swath of the workers, developers there realized that they were selling,
Yeah.
contracts to the Defense Department,
Right.
and they're like, this is not what we signed up to build stuff on the internet for. We wanted to change the world,
Right.
not in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Folks who signed up for a company who was, for a long time saying that their motto was "Don't be evil," and for
Right.
them at least, it was a wake up moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Well,
I mean,
I think,
seriously, like
yeah,
you're stuck. You're making a
yeah,
lot of money with Google. What do you do?
right, right, yeah. Well, I mean, I think like I talk a little bit about this, but like historically in the tech industry, when something isn't right at work, I think the default response for a lot of folks is, oh, well, I'm just going to have to get a job somewhere else,
Yeah.
which is a perfectly valid response. I don't want to
Right.
suggest that it's not, but um, historically, that's been our best option. To basically say like, okay, well, let's see if I can get a job someplace better. Um, and the thing is that there's no guarantee that new situation is necessarily going to be an improvement, right? Like the top line numbers might improve, like maybe your salary is going to get better, but
Well, yeah.
um,
Let's be real. You're going to go from Google to IBM, go from Google to Microsoft. They
sure,
do business with the Defense Department. I mean, like
sure, yeah,
it's lateral.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think, but it applies to pretty much any part of the tech industry too. Like if you're working for a small agency that works for independent businesses primarily, or you're more of a social marketing manager, um, and you're maybe not pulling down a Facebook salary, still it kind of comes down to, all right, well, do I decide to put up with the situation or do I decide to move
Yeah.
on?
Right.
And I think what's changed in the last 5 or 10 years is that knowledge workers like you and me have, and this happened at Google. They started having conversations with each other. They started
Mm.
talking to each other about why this is happening, how it made them feel, what they might want to do about it, and that slow work of talking to people and figuring out how to put a plan in place. That's organizing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think when you say like organizing, people think
mhm.
of like what they've seen in movies with, pamphlets and people in
Right.
like neighborhood meetings, like "Rah, run the guy
Yeah.
on a rail," like
Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
think about just like, the Slack channel conversations of like, this sucks.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. It's funny. We think of somebody giving like a big fiery speech somewhere
Right.
on a workplace floor, and then
That's
everyone's
trauma.
like, "Yeah, yeah." And time and again, history's kind of shown us that organizing is really slow.
Yeah.
It's coalition building, it's conversations, it's talking to people who may not agree with you, it's finding points of overlap and trying to understand why there might be disconnects.
Yeah.
And at Google, I mean the organizing process for them looked very similar, and it took a lot of different forms. I mean, there were conversations online over email. There were people organizing little task groups to upvote questions to be asked at the next town hall for company leadership. Like
That's pretty smart. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's like it doesn't take one form. It looks different at every company, and it might have multiple forms at any one company. But
Yeah.
um, it's pretty. It's a way of sort of like, again, kind of coalition building and looking for those points of connection and figuring out how to move
Mm.
forward.
Well, how does some, and I feel like I'm just drilling the journalist here, but like, um,
Oh
when you
no.
wrote the book, man,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I
how
did.
does it